But before we do those problems, we need to look at a few concepts. We will do that, and then I will go back and do those problems so that you are prepared with whatever it is that I expect you to know for the first midterm. So just to complete the certain formalities, we are going to be meeting again on 6th. The next class will be on 6th after the exam 2, 3 and 4. 5 is the Thursday and we meet on Friday. I therefore thought I would check out and see if there's anybody whose birthday falls in between. Yeah. And there are 2 people on 3rd September. Ketika Girl. Where is she? Ah, okay. And Devika, yes. Okay. 3rd November. So, now, of course, the interesting part, who will I share it with? It's with a Nobel laureate in chemistry. A Nobel laureate in chemistry in the year 2001, Noyori. Noyori actually got it along with 2 other people. He got it with Knowles and with Barry Sharpless. These are the 3 people who essentially came up with a very ingenious method for producing molecules with the chiral center. Because normally you do reactions, you simply get resonant mixture. So you go, nature is very good at it. It does just one stereoisomer without the other. But if you try doing the reaction in the lab, you will always end up with equal mixtures, and therefore you get a resonant mixture. If you get one more than the other, which is what we call as the enantiomeric excess, then it's great. But what will be the enantiomeric excess? Even if you get 60-70%, I think we make a big comment down to the nature of 100%. But what these people did, Noyori, whose birthday falls on 3rd September, Barry Sharpless and Knowles, they essentially came up with methods to be able to produce these compounds in specific stereoisomeric form. And for that, they devised catalysts that will essentially enhance the rate of reaction for one and in relation to the other isomer. So they can produce these compounds with rich yields with the sales specificity that you want. And those are really ingenious experiments. They came up with ingenious catalysts. They came up with almost they got the Nobel Prize in the year 2001. Noyori, Sharpless, and Knowles. And therefore, 3rd September, 2 people shared it with somebody big. Okay, now let's get back to our diatomic vibrational spectroscopy. And we apparently stopped at a point where we said that the assumption of a simple harmonic oscillator, where the potential looks like this. Half k squared, you have the potential, And once you have this potential, you can calculate the energies and the wave function using the Schrodinger equation. We equal this potential, V equals half k square. These are potential terms. Solve the Schrodinger equation. And what do you get for energy? You get HU into V plus a half. Of course, we have put it this way. This is going to be in units of, this is in joule seconds. This is going to be in second inverse. This is going to be in joules. I can get the whole thing in terms of wave number if I get the energy as omega into V plus a half, where the frequency is of being given in terms of hertz, I can give it in terms of wave number. And you know how to convert from frequency to wave number. So it is nu by C will give you nu bar. You know that. So if I gave you in frequency units in hertz, you know how to convert to frequency units in wave numbers. If I know it in wave numbers, this is going to be the equation that defines for me the energy levels as a function of the vibrational quantum number. Because energy depends on the first part of the quantum number, the levels are going to be equally spaced, p equals 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And I can actually superimpose this energy level diagram into this potential, and then I can say that's going to be V equal to 0, that's going to be V equal to 1, that's going to be V equal to 2, and these cases be equal. So what is the potential that's actually telling me? The potential is telling me to what extent this vibration will go out and come in. If this curve defines for me the maximum extent and the minimum extent that will occur in this vibration. As they go to higher and higher levels, what happens to this maximum and minimum? Well, they go further out and further in. And that's understandable, because when I go to levels with higher and higher energies, I can actually distort the bond that much more. And therefore, you will find that this will happen. But then, if I go to V equals 2, if I go to V equals 10 million, which is probably up in sky somewhere at vibration level, what happens to the molecule? It still goes and comes back, and so it comes back. Under a simple harmonic oscillator approximation, this potential is simply going to go up to infinity and it will be bound all the way. Meaning that however much energy I give, the molecule will keep making vibrations back and forth, maybe to larger and larger excursions, but I can never break it. So a simple harmonic oscillator can actually never be broken. But then that's an approximation. We know that that's not the case. Bonds break, that's how chemistry works. If only all oscillators had been simple harmonic and they stayed simple harmonic forever, one course less, no chemistry. Absolutely no chemistry. Because you can't break a bond, you can't make a bond. Because so, however much energy you give, it will still keep vibrating, it will never break. That's the simple harmonic oscillator approximation. And it's an approximation, we know that. Because every time you take a bond, you can find a million ways to break it. Put light, put heat, do so many things, you can keep breaking it. So essentially it means that I can get this guy to vibrate beyond a certain point, and beyond a certain point, then it will go away, broken, dissociated. But the simple harmonic oscillator approximation does not tell me that. So if somebody asks you how much energy do you need to break the simple harmonic oscillator, infinite. That's going to be your answer. In this approximation, we also came up with a selection rule. Just like in rotational spectroscopy. In rotational spectroscopy, we needed to check a few things. What are the three things that we needed for the transition to occur? First, resonance. Energy spacing must be equal to the frequency of light that is shining. That's always going to be the case. Resonance is a very trivial condition that you will always need. Next, the molecule must have permanent dipole. If you don't have a permanent dipole, you're not going to see a rotational transition. And third, a delta J equals plus minus 1 selection rule. You have all three together, then a transition will occur. You don't have any one of them, it's not going to occur. So, for all those who are very keen on electronics, it's like an AND gate with three inputs. Everything must be there to get your output out there. Any one missing, you're not going to have an output. Which means no resonance, no transition. No selection rule, no violation of the selection rule, no transition. No dipole movement, no transition. You have to expect something very similar in the case of a Simple harmonic oscillator. First condition, resonance, always there. Again, you will have to have a resonance between the states involved. So if I want to make a transition from 0 to 1, I should know what the energy spacing is going to be, and I must provide light at that particular frequency so that the molecule can jump from here to here. Anything more, anything less, the molecule is simply going to reduce to absorb that energy. You know that. Point number 2. We will come to dipole moment stuff a little later. Point number 2, selection rule. And what's the selection rule in this case? Delta V equals plus minus 1. Just expect to have delta J equals plus minus 1. And what is delta V defined as? P prime minus V double prime. Upper state quantum number minus the lower state quantum number. That should be 1. Obviously it can't be minus 1. Because minus 1 is not a physically realizable situation. You can't have an upper state quantum number lower than the lower state quantum number in a pure vibrational transition. When I say it's a pure vibrational transition, I mean a vibrational transition where I'm not tampering with the electronic structure. The electronic structure of the molecule is still in this ground state. I'm not playing with the electronic structure. I can do that later. I can take an electron from one orbital and put it in another orbital. Then what am I doing? I'm doing an electronic transition. At this point in time, I'm not doing an electronic transition. All electrons are intact, I don't touch them. All I'm doing is just provide sufficient energy to make vibrational jumps. After you get back from the exam, you will see that when you're trying to make vibrational jumps, the rotations aren't going to keep quiet. You will also be making rotational jumps. Today we will not get into that complication. We will not even worry about what happens to the rotation energy. We're just going to be worrying about what happens to the vibrational part. So V0 to V1, if I have to make a jump, I have the selection rule. Plus 1 is meaningful, plus 1 and minus 1 are mathematically allowed. Minus 1 is not physically realizable for an infrared transition or for a vibration transition. Just like delta J, plus 1 was meaningful, minus 1 was not meaningful. Within a couple of days after you get back, we will see how the minus 1 now suddenly becomes meaningful. And we will see that in this case. Okay. Selection rule is this. What about the dipole moment stuff? Supposing I take the hydrogen molecule. Zero dipole. Vibrates out. What's the dipole? Zero dipole. Zero dipole. There is actually no change in the dipole moment during the vibration. And if there is no change in the dipole moment during the vibration, the molecule will just not get the charge. In other words, in the case of the rotational transitions, we said the molecule must have a permanent dipole. What happens when the molecule has a permanent dipole? When it rotates, there is a constant change in the dipole moment. So it's a very similar philosophy. We are trying to see whether there is a change in the dipole moment when the molecule is vibrating. Hydrogen molecule will not give you any infrared transition, will not absorb light for a vibrational transition, even though it is on resonance, even though you are trying to obey the delta V equals plus 1 selection rule. It's not going to make a transition because when it does this, there is actually no change in the dipole moment. So the condition for a transition is going to be a change of dipole during a transition. Why is it sort of looks a little different? There we said permanent dipole. Here I'm not saying permanent dipole. All I'm saying is the molecule must change the dipole during vibration. Take an example where this is realized. Carbon dioxide, linear molecule. Dipole moment, 0. If I only had said the molecule must have a permanent dipole for a vibration transition, which I am not saying, but if I said that, then CO2 also will get thrown out. Because CO2 doesn't have a dipole moment. But then look at what happens to CO2. CO2 has got, actually how many modes of vibration does a carbon dioxide molecule have? 3 n minus 3 n minus 5, because it's a linear molecule. So 3 n minus 5, how many vibrations do I have? 4 vibrations. Because the 3 atoms over 3 to 3 is 9 minus 5, 4 vibrations. And what are those 4 vibrations that the molecule will show? A symmetric stretch, this is vibration, an asymmetric stretch, this, and the last one is going to be a bend. But the bend, there are 2 types of bends. You can have this bend, or it can flap this way. That's how you get your 4 vibrations. So there are 4. Now examine these vibrations. What happens to this vibration? 0 dipole, 0 dipole, 0 dipole, 0 dipole. There is no change in the dipole moment during this vibration. Therefore, this vibration is not going to be seen in an infrared spectrometer when you try to look for it. But what about this guy? 0 dipole. Let me keep it a little short. So when this guy goes out and this guy comes in, what happens to the dipole moment now? Oh, it's not 0. Because this bond is short and this bond is long. And then when it does this, the dipole moment actually flips to the other side. Now this bond is long and this bond is short, and therefore it will go from 0 dipole to some positive dipole, let us say, and then a dipole in the opposite direction. So as the molecule is actually performing, as the molecule is performing an asymmetric stretch, anti-symmetric stretch this way, what's happening with the dipole moment? It's actually changing. It's going from 0 to a non-zero value on one direction, 0 and to the opposite side of the other way. So as the molecule is doing this, the dipole moment is constantly changing, and that's what you wanted in the first place. So now, resonance is met, selection goal is met, and the issue of a changing dipole moment during the vibration transition is also met, and therefore the carbon dioxide molecule, which by itself has no dipole moment, actually produces the dipole moment back and forth during a vibration. And why do we keep saying that the carbon dioxide molecule has 0 dipole when it actually has a dipole at one point? It's the average dipole moment we are talking about. This vibration, mind you, occurs on picosecond time scales. Your dipole moment measurements are all done on a much slower time scale. And therefore, when you actually measure the carbon dioxide dipole moment, it's an average dipole moment that you measure, and therefore it is 0. But if you could actually measure the dipole moment of this molecule, maybe on an ultra-fast time scale by exciting with one vibration, you can actually see it. And therefore, you will find that there are experiments today which you can perform on ultra-fast time scales and actually realize these little things. But as long as you make a dipole moment measurement on a slow time scale, it is 0 because I am looking at the average one. What about the bending? This is 0. Is this 0 dipole or non-zero dipole? Has to be a non-zero dipole because there is a dipole moment in this direction, a dipole moment in this direction, and the result has to be a dipole moment in that direction. Therefore, that's a dipole. 0. I go back, a dipole moment in the other direction. So when the molecule is doing this, flapping this way, it's actually changing dipole from a 0 value to some positive value through 0 to the negative value and back and forth. So of the 4 vibrations, 2 are identical. We call them as degenerate vibrations. They are the same frequency, they look alike. And there is nothing that you can do to figure out whether it is this or this unless you have some reference directions. Otherwise, this and this is identical, but both will absorb the radiation and make a transition from one quantum level to another because these vibrations cause changes in the dipole moment. This will also absorb radiation to make a jump from V0 to V1 because this anti-symmetric stretch also changes dipole moment during this vibration. But a symmetric stretch, you can keep hitting it as hard as you want with the light. It just won't look at you because there is no change in dipole, because that is not going to be seen. So the real test for a molecule to see whether it is going to make a jump from V0 to V1 is not its permanent dipole, whether it has it or not. That's not the issue. Is this dipole moment changing during a vibration? That's the issue. Later, for those of you who will do chemistry and who will look at a full course on symmetry and group theory, you will see that you can actually rationalize these things based on the point groups and based on the concepts of grouping. And you'll be able to say whether these vibrations will be seen, which vibrations will be seen, which won't be seen for a given molecule, and so on. We won't touch the polyatomics anymore for a while. We'll go away. We are going to be looking at diatomics. The reason I did that was because in the case of the polyatomic, that's the only system I can take where I can show you that in spite of the molecule not having a dipole moment, a 0 dipole, it can still show you infrared transition because specific vibrations can alter the dipole moment of the molecule. In the case of dipole, in the case of diatomic molecule, I can't really do that. If I take H2, we've got no dipole, and it has only one vibration, just this. That doesn't change the dipole either, and therefore a non-zero dipole, a 0 dipole moment diatomic will always be infrared inactive. If I take a HCl molecule, which has a dipole, so the dipole will change. So you get the wrong impression, oh, I need a dipole moment for the molecule to see our entire transition. No, you don't need a dipole moment for the molecule. What you need is a changing dipole during the vibration. Yeah. You will see one line. One line. Good question. But I can do one thing. Why this and this identical? Because the surrounding is so symmetric. Therefore, I can't. So suppose I make this molecule sit on a surface. If I put carbon dioxide on a surface, some aluminum surface or iron surface or something, then this transition, this vibration is along this table. This table, this other vibration is going parallel to the table. Symmetry is broken because you put a surface in there. And now when you do this experiment, you will actually see that you will see a dominance. Because the two vibrations now are no longer the same. So if you can somehow lower the symmetry of the molecule around it, then these two will show up as two different. Otherwise, they are sort of identical twins in many respects. There are many experiments, some of which that we do, where we put carbon dioxide in some cage, and you will find the cage has very poor symmetry, and therefore these two will show up in the cage as two distinct transitions. But if you have gas-phase carbon dioxide, there's nothing you can do to say which is which, because you can't even define up-down. Okay. So
should we see carbon dioxide microwave spectra also?
No, carbon dioxide microwave will not show up because it's zero value. Yeah, but the problem is the vibrations are much faster. Yeah, the time scale, vibrating time scale are much faster than the rotation time scale. So the rotation only sees the average, and the average is zero. That's the problem. You're right. There is a vibration that is changing the dipole. So why can't I see the rotation when this dipole moment is changing during a vibration? Yeah, but the vibration transitions are sub-picosecond time scales. The rotation transitions are many picoseconds, not less than picoseconds. Therefore, vibration effects are much faster. So the rotation, when the molecule is rotating, the molecule has actually made many vibrations by the time it is done this rotation. Therefore, what the rotation essentially sees is only an average dipole, which is zero to the molecule. So it's a question of time scale that kills us from seeing the carbon dioxide microwave spectrum. Okay. So this is therefore the situation, resonance, changing dipole, selection rule. If I get all three worked out, molecules will take a transition. Okay. What is this transition called? 0 to 1? Fundamental. Like your guitar. Take your guitar and pluck it the lowest frequency that you would get. That's your fundamental. What's an overtone in this? That's the overtone. What is this? It's a hot band. Because if I have to make this transition, what do I need? I need molecules in this place. How will I get the molecules up there? Heating it. Because the vibrational ladder has spacings typically of the order of many hundreds of wave numbers. The bending vibration of carbon dioxide, for example, is 667 wave numbers. And that's considered a low frequency mode. 667. But 667 is how much of kT? What is kT in room temperature in terms of wave number? 200. 667 is how much? About 3.5 or more than 3. Let's say it's 3. If it is 3, how much percentage? 5%. You still don't have much molecules up there. The stretching vibrations for carbon dioxide, they're all at 2300 or thereabout. 2300 is something like 10 times. So e power minus 10. Forget it, don't even calculate it. You're not going to get a population there. Therefore, you're going to have very little population in rotational transition, in vibrational transition. In rotations, no problem. The level spacing was like a few wave numbers, 2, 3, 4 wave numbers. Well, the KT was 200 wave numbers. And that is the reason why you saw population in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, 12, 15 and so on. Because the level spacing was very small, the energy was large, and you could actually populate a whole series of levels. And you, of course, we did this calculation on what is the most probable J and so on and so forth. What are the most probable B? V0. You don't need a formula for that. No KT by 2 HCV square, nothing on the stop. What's the most probable B? Most probable B is the lowest energy state. That's it. B equal to 0. So if I want to see a transition from 0, 1 to 2, I will have to do something to get the population up there, so that I can then see a transition going from here to here. But to get molecules up here, I have to heat it, and therefore these bands are called hot bands. 1 to 2 is the hot band, 2 to 3 is the hot band, 3 to 4 is the hot band, but such slowly the intensity will drop. Yeah.
How do you make sure that when they are heated, our molecules are what is moving on to what is moving?
Oh, you have no control over that, depending on how much you heat. See, if I,
Is there any quantification on the molecule?
no, it depends on how much when I heat it. Let us say when I go from 300 K, so let us say I go to 600 K. So what is my KT now? At 200 K, or 300 K, my KT was 200 wave numbers. So at 600 K, my KT is going to be 400 wave numbers. I know the spacings. So now I can recalculate what the population will be here, here, and everywhere. So when I heat it, I'm not selectively populating V equal to 1. I'm going to be helping all the levels to get populated. But in what proportion are they going to get populated? They're going to get populated based on the energy difference between these levels and the new KT for this new temperature. So if my KT goes to 600 K, my T goes to 600 K, my KT now is going to be 400 wave numbers. Average energy is larger, that's what it means. And so a state which was earlier, let us say 800 wave numbers, let us say this was 800. When KT was 200, what will be the population here? 800 by 200, that is 4. And what is equal minus 4? Or 2%. Now I have increased the KT to temperature to 600 K. So what is KT now? KT is 400. If KT is 400, what is 800 to 400 going to be? 2. For E power minus 2. And what is E power minus 2 going to be? 15%. So my population earlier was 2%, and now my population is 15%. Therefore, I'm going to see a stronger band making a transition from 1 to 2. What about the other levels? Everybody will get some share of their population. But how much share they will get will depend on where the state is relative to KT. So if you want a large population V equal to 4, well maybe you will have to heat it to something like 700, 800 K, 1000 K to get the population up there. So of course, which means that the 1 and the 2 levels will be having their more than their fair share. They'll be really enjoying it. But to get population in much higher levels, you will necessarily have to go to much higher temperatures. Of course, there's another problem. You can't take a molecule to 1000 K and then think that I can only transition. The molecule must burn and break down by then. And therefore, there is no experiment beyond that. So you have other complications. Nobody said like to think. Okay, so let's look at this situation. So this is the fundamental overtone, and this is going to be hot band. Supposing I ask you to calculate all these frequencies for this. What's the frequency of the fundamental and the hot band going to be? Same, because it's all equal in space. What's the frequency of the overtone going to be? Twice this. So for a simple harmonic oscillator, it's very simple. Every transition which obeys delta E equal to plus 1 will have the same frequency because the levels are all equal in space. Overtones will have 0 to 2 will have twice, 0 to 3 will have twice, and so on. So there is no big deal. Now let's see what happens if the molecule is not harmonic. And what do I mean by saying the molecule is not harmonic? By saying the molecule is not harmonic, all I'm saying is that we started off by saying for a simple harmonic oscillator, the restoring force is proportional to a displacement. So we said X equals K into X minus Xe, where X was an equilibrium distance and X was a new position. So you pulled it beyond that, there was a restoring force trying to get it back in the opposite direction. That's why you have a minus sign in the equation. If this restoring force is going to be proportional to the displacement forever, then this is a simple harmonic oscillator. But if the restoring force is not going to be